Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you so much for joining me here. Hope you're having an amazing day. We're taking a look here at Rndr, kind of seeing what's going on. We're going to look at some Elliott wave and just kind of redraw out these Fibonacci retracement levels now that we've likely hit a high here, our most recent high. And obviously, if you're new to the channel, keep in mind I'm not a financial advisor. I do love teaching people to trade. I hope you can learn something here today. If you do learn something, obviously help become a better trader. CryptoCash.tech is a website. Link down below where you can learn how to trade a little bit more effectively. We also have a Twitter here as well that is fantastic, giving you as much news, critical updates as possible, both fundamental and technical, along with a little bit of humor here and there. But I do want to show you really quick here the chart that I sent out yesterday for Rndr. Let's see here. It looks like it's right here. And this is basically the possible playout chart that we saw from yesterday. And while it didn't come down as low as I'd expected, it just shot straight up and hit that Fibonacci retracement level and bounced off. Okay, so the good news is we were accurate in that sense, and it worked out fairly well. It just it hit a lot harder and faster than originally anticipated. So what we'll do is we'll draw out some new anticipations here and kind of just talk a little bit about this Elliott wave and kind of see what that means, right? Because we haven't established our highest high yet on this fifth wave, so in truth it could go higher. But if this is the high, then we could expect and should expect a pullback to perform lower highs and lower lows. All right, that's basically what that implies. So we'll go ahead and talk about that and much more. So let's go ahead and get right into it. First things first, RSI, we're up over 70 on the RSI tentatively. I like to say tentative because it truly hasn't closed yet. Today's candlestick's still open, but it does look like it wants to close there. Even though it's a fairly large candle wick up to the 260 mark, it is important to recognize that this could turn itself around. So if this candlestick closes closer to a gravestone doji candle, we can expect an absolute retracement from there. It's a pretty strong choice, or chance rather, because when you think about it, in a full 24-hour period, the price went up that high and came right back down to where it opened. That's what a gravestone doji candle does, is it really just kind of tells you that, hey, it's probably not going to go much further here because there's a lot of selling pressure. All right, so that's kind of where we're at there for the RSI. Good news is the money flow index is still high. So with high volume, a lot of money coming in, for lack of better terms, is going to be able to sustain that price point. So I'm still under the impression that we're going to see the price probably bounce off this 0.236 level, but worst case 0.382, okay, because that's again a little bit more volume accumulation at that point. We don't need to worry about retracement too much just yet, but I do feel like it's in the cards, at least on the fairly immediate future, if you will, because again, we're above all moving averages. We have a lot of bullish convergence here, but for the most part, it's probably overextended on the smaller time frames, and that'll lead to somewhat of a turnaround. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's discuss the Elliott wave just so you kind of understand specifically what that means or what that implies. Because really with Elliott wave, if you kind of look at the big picture, what it does, it takes it takes a higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, and then the last, basically the fifth or the third higher high, essentially is the max out point. That's where the price will stop and turn itself around. When it turns itself around, it performs an ABC, which is a lower low, lower high, lower low. Okay, so it kind of comes down, up, down, and then at that point it's fully reset. So we're kind of at the very top here, if you will, potentially. Once again, I say potential because if the price continues higher, then it'll continue to create new higher tops. But for the most part, right now, if that is the highest point, we can expect a pullback to 195, 175, or 155 as three potential targets. Okay, that's basically what we're looking at there. So 4 hour, what does this tell us here? Well, we got a pretty strong red candle here. I think that this overextension for one needs to pull back. But for two, we can see Bitcoin dominance kind of hitting that plateau, and that the price of Bitcoin is likely going to pull back here. I think we're going to see a drop below 29,000. Again, catch my Bitcoin video if you're curious about what I mean by that, but the long story short here is that I think that we are due for a correction on Bitcoin, and that could be pushing the price action down here because the last 8 to 12 hours for Bitcoin has been red. Same thing with Rndr, right? So if Bitcoin is performing brilliantly, then I think Rndr will continue. If Bitcoin continues to struggle and kind of get stuck sideways there, then I think we're going to see a correction down to at the very least this 220 mark. So again, I got my alert set for 220 just in case that hits. We'll reevaluate and see. But generally speaking, that's going to be a strong support. So on the 4 hour time frame, we can see the money flow is coming down. So on smaller time frames, it is diverging. We can also see a potential divergence on the MACD here as well. That's a pretty significant reality. If the price were to come down and cross, then there's a good chance we will see the price action come back down. Because if you look at this previous divergence, just say to give you an example, this was the previous divergence here. That was at what? April 18th at 1700. April 18th at 1700, we diverged right here and wicked all the way down. While it did come back up, it still foretold the price coming down in the overall trend. Okay, that's a swing trader's tool. To me, MACD on the 4-hour, converging or diverging, that's a pretty big indication of which direction things are going to head. That said, we're on the horizon for that, just something to be mindful of. So everything else looks pretty good. I mean, we're above all moving averages, nothing to worry about. But what does the hourly tell us? Well, first of all, we probably were overextended to a 9 here previously, which we can see on TD sequential. And what TD sequential does, it basically takes the fourth previous candlestick and counts up to a 9. And if that fourth previous candlestick is lower than the most recent, then it keeps counting. Once you hit a 9, you overextended, and it's supposed to turn itself around. Right now, again, there's case in point where it doesn't turn itself around here, as you can see. But those are one-offs. For lack of better terms, we hit a 9, we're on our way back down to a 6, and then we got a little bit of a reset there. It's a great chance we could see another 9 hours of continuation of the downside. Furthermore, as well, on the cloud here, we can see the lagging spans soon to intersect with the price action. Conversion line is trying to intersect with the baseline, and we're above the cloud. So there's basically 2 out of 3 indications to sell your long position or to close your position in profit, and then to potentially wait for the price to either stay above or come below the cloud. Right now at this point, it's best not to short into it, but it does also look like it wants to drop and come down. A lot of reasons why, but I would also just urge caution not to short the top, or short what you feel is the top, because it could not be the top, but it does feel fairly obvious that it's going to continue lower. Once again, different strokes for different folks, right? So again, whatever kind of trading style you have is up to you, but I would approach with caution. It does make a lot more sense that the price will gravitate towards this lower support level here. So I do really think that we're going to see the pullback there. And it's just one of those things that, as awesome as Rndr is, it's no disrespect to the coin itself. It's gonna have to come back down if you're in a situation where the price action is just overextended, which it is on smaller time frames. Keep in mind the macro looks pretty good, but it would make sense for us to have to retrace at some point here soon, just because we've had a pretty significant run over the last this is about a month and a half's worth of continuation of the upside. I think it's time for the price to come back down, but just keep in mind, this is an important factor. The previous resistance here, right, retested multiple times, should likely work as a new support. Okay, so the price does come back down to 220. That seems like a very logical place to go ahead and add to your position. But I'm going to be curious to see what the candlestick closes like today. Are we going to close as a gravestone doji candle, or are we going to continue potentially to go further upwards? One last little thing I just see here as well, we have almost basically four white soldiers. The candlestick pattern goes as if you see 3 strong green days in a row, the 4th day is typically red. So you could argue that we got these 2 plus this guy here, and causing our 4th day here to potentially be red. It's still too early to tell, right? So again, just some things to kind of think about, but I'll go ahead and throw out, of course, on Twitter our updated anticipation for this coin, roughly where I feel it's going to go. And just stay tuned for that. But hopefully this was beneficial and you found some benefit there. If so, of course, cryptocash.tech is a site link down below. We will bring in day trades to the community soon here as well. But right now I've been sending out a lot of swing trade signals, and this might be a consideration for a swing trade here soon. Thank you so much for joining me here. Hope you have a great rest of your day. I will see you in the next one. Take care.